Cool. Okay, well, first of all, thank you again, Michael, for having me here. I'm excited to be here with all of you, and today I'm gonna share with you something that we're organizing. We haven't yet announced it, so you're actually the first ones to hear about it. Hopefully, all of you will join the challenge. And but first of all, before even getting to that point, actually, what my objective for today is really to kind of get feedback from you around how to better frame the challenge, or what kind of things we could include that you might be interested in. So without wasting too much time on this slide, let me start with, let's see, okay, there we go. So this is the agenda. I'm going to walk you through a bit of the TinyML foundation. I mean, obviously, you guys are all familiar with TinyML, but I'm going to kind of give you a bit around the foundation, what the foundation does, and then talk about AI for Good, given that we are kind of partnering with AI for Good for this challenge, and then actually get into the challenge and give you an overview of what we're planning and get feedback from you. Cool. So to start with, I want to start from the TinyML Foundation, because this challenge is going to be sponsored by the TinyML Foundation. So I thought it would be useful for you guys to kind of hear what the TinyML Foundation vision is. And I think it's very relevant to all of us. It is about a world of trillion intelligent devices enabled by this new and exciting technology that sense, analyze, and autonomously act together to create a healthier and more sustainable environment for all. I think, I'm personally very passionate about this last piece of the statement, and I think we all are, and I think it's really cool that we have a chance to do this challenge to address one of the problems that we are seeing in the world that could actually solve an actual problem in different countries. In terms of like what the actual TinyML Foundation is, it is a non-profit organization, and the objective really is to bring together people from different backgrounds, both from the research community, but also from the industry, and together really come up with a set of effectively resources to solve some of the kind of most interesting problems in this space. So you can see here, the goal is to connect various technologies and innovations in this domain to enable effectively new products and businesses across the whole ecosystem. Okay, so talking about TinyML specifically, it's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I didn't participate in the previous talk, so I don't know, exactly what you guys covered. But I just wanted to give you this kind of perspective on where we are at, right? TinyML as a kind of concept came up around 2017, and we're now a few years down the line, and we're starting to see products being developed actually using TinyML, right? And this is really cool. And some examples that you probably all know about are things like keyword spotting on your phone, for example, is something that is being done on the edge, right, on the actual device itself, on usually a microcontroller to save power. And things like hey Google, hey Alexa within within a smart speaker, for example, are things that could be that are done in the edge in most cases. So there are products, like mainstream products, that are being used, that are using this technology, but we're still not seeing a proliferation of these products. We're still seeing just a few, right? And the expectation is that in the next 2-3 years, we're going to start seeing more of these products that are going to be doing more things, right? And there's really a potential to lower power consumption, increase really innovation across the whole space. So I'm really excited about like this potential that we're unlocking with this new technology. And by 2030, there is an expectation that there's going to be a lot more devices. But I just wanted to kind of set the scene around the fact that we're still at a kind of nascent stage of this journey, and I think it's now your turn to actually drive innovation and build intelligent, smart, cool products that could solve real problems, right? I think that's what I'm really passionate about. Is like, let's not just build stuff for the sake of it. Let's build stuff that can actually address our problems and make our lives better and our communities better as well. So in terms of last slide actually on TinyML. So I mentioned about like bringing people together. The way we do this in the TinyML around the TinyML Foundation is actually by providing the ability for different people in different countries to set up meetups. And actually, it's quite interesting that we now have about 36 countries with meetups and about 9,000 members across the whole world. So it's a very dynamic group of people that are getting together and talking about all sorts of like interesting aspects of around this technology, around the use cases, and so on. So if you haven't yet looked it up, do have a look at the meetup opportunities. Okay, now moving on to AI for Good. So I mentioned that we are partnering with. So it's going to be a partnership between the TinyML Foundation and the AI for Good initiative. This is an ITU initiative. So they started off, I believe, maybe 3-4 years ago, with the first challenge that was around really connectivity and trying to promote 5G and AI at the same time. And now we're kind of moving on to a more specific challenge around TinyML. So it will be more local, more specific around TinyML, not so much about connectivity. And the nice thing about this community and about what we're planning to do here is around really kind of bringing students and professionals together to solve this challenge I'll just present to you in a second. But effectively around, there will be a strong community of people getting together and having a chance to not only meet with each other, but also hear from experts around different topics and kind of find out with tutorials and hands-on labs how to actually do these kind of things. And I mean, I'm talking to the choir here a little bit because you guys are all experts. I mean, you've been doing a week of different interesting courses here or different activities. So you probably don't need most of this stuff, but it's nice to know that we're kind of getting together a few different communities and trying to like really be as inclusive as possible and as useful as possible as well, with the objective, as I mentioned, to like solve a real challenge. So I won't go too much into the timeline, but just to give you an idea, the challenge will open around end of May, beginning of June, and we'll announce finalists around October, November timeframe. So that's kind of the high level timeline. But what is really exciting actually is the challenge itself. So this is something that actually was Marco's idea initially to address this challenge. And we all thought that it was a really good idea because effectively it's clear that there is a lot of missing information when it comes to weather information around the world. And actually in some places where weather information might be more useful, for example, in Africa, but also other developing countries where there is an actual need for weather information to actually kind of perform different tasks. For example, in agriculture, there is actually less information around weather. So there is a scarcity around weather stations in different countries. And one of the challenges really is around the durability of these weather stations, right? A lot of the weather stations out there tend to break or tend to need fixing, excuse me, or tend to not provide the right information. There is it's really interesting when you think about weather and when you think about rain and wind. There is a lot of variability in different in the way rain and wind operates in different parts of the world. Temperature can obviously have a big impact, but also there is a lot of variability depending on the land masses that are around or the atmospheric pressure and other types of variables as well that have a big impact. So it's really important to have local weather information because it's hard to model the weather across like big areas. And right now there are, for example, satellites that are able to provide weather information for specific areas, but they usually have like a kind of range of 10 kilometers. So they're able to tell you like what is going to happen in those 10-kilometer ranges, but not really specifically in a certain area. And we feel that that's a missing link. So the goal of the challenge will be effectively to build a low-cost, low-power, reliable and accurate, easy to install and maintain weather station. But actually, the more important thing is that we're requiring people to think about building a weather station without any moving parts. So far, most of the weather stations out there have moving parts, and those moving parts are the ones that tend to break the most. And we feel like that could be addressed by TinyML effectively. So we could really start thinking about building something that has effectively a microcontroller and some sensors and is able to detect different weather conditions based on the sensor being used. We had some ideas, but I'm not going to share them with you at this point because I'm actually curious to hear your thoughts. But effectively, yes, that's the problem, right? So the problem statement is around building weather stations that can detect local information and be able to local data and be able to effectively tell the world what the weather is going to be like in that specific area. Marco, do you have some comments?
I think we're right on time. So if you want to give a few minutes for people to comment and react, and if you can share your email in the chat, then people can get back to you through email as well. Sure.
Okay, so yeah, the question to you guys is, I'll share the email in a second while you think about this maybe. What use cases, how do I go back? Okay, I don't know how to go back actually, but it doesn't matter. Oh, there we go. What use cases do you see for this? Like what thinking about, so if you had a weather station that was able to like detect the local weather condition, what could you do with this, right? Like what could you use it for in your local environment? So that's the question I have for you, but also more in general, if you have any feedback around the challenge about the things we could, we should focus on, I'd love to hear that. We'd love to hear that. So while I share the email on the chat, feel free to comment or add anything.
So any questions for Alessandro? And while you think about the questions, okay, Jonathan, please.
Yes. When you say what use cases do you see for this, I would say that if you had something that could be deployed easily, that anyone could do it, you could create a server or an app that can collect all the data in a central thing. Then you can monitor the changes in weather, and then over years you could probably, I suppose you could also see how the weather patterns change for global warming, but I'm not sure if that's right.
No, I mean that's super interesting. I think if we were to effectively make this data public or have a central repository for this data, I think we could, that could be addressed, right? Like global warming, how does the weather change across time? Obviously, we wouldn't be able to like do that on day one, but I think it could be an interesting work stream here.
Maybe just okay. There's some comments or in the chat from Saleh from Ethiopia, saying that he was looking into this for village level weather forecasting. So to have like local weather forecasting. And Segun has a comment. Please, Segun.
While we get Segun online, on the I forgot who asked it, but on the local village weather forecasting, it'd be interesting to hear like why would you need that, right? Like what is it that you could do differently that you can't do today if you had local village specific weather forecasting?
So Saleh, if you want to get back to Alessandro in the chat, or later. And yeah, Monday said that numerical weather prediction is key for the generation of climatic information for forecasting. So this data can be used, of course, for this prediction. Excellent. Oh, Segun, let's see. Okay, there you go.
I'm just thinking. There's this idea that going through my mind over the years. Back in Nigeria, prices of some commodities, example, like palm oil, always fluctuates, and it's always been maybe over the years, it's always been affected by the climate. So knowing this local weather in our area, we could forecast what the price will be, so that farmers could easily know what the profit will be in the immediate future, so that they will know how to plan. So it's an idea that is going on, and if this can local weather could be monitored, we'll be able to monitor this prices fluctuation.
Super. So one more question from John, then I'm afraid we need to move to the next talk. John, please.
All right. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity. So talking about local data collected in local villages and all that, I remember, well, I was privileged to have my internship with IITA, Institute of Tropical Agriculture, something like that. And what we did, or what they used data to do, was there were particular, so because the weather fluctuates, just like Shegun mentioned earlier, there are some particular seeds and variations of those seeds that were viable at particular times. So probably a type of maybe a plantain seed or a banana seed was better to be planted at this time, and probably another one at another time. So that obtaining that kind of information helped the local farmers to know when and what type they should use. So that kind of communication usually happened between the IIT resource people and the people that they had on the field. But looking at this and the idea of TinyML, if there is a way we could just have all of these things, because I also remember that the information we collected was actually was eventually digitized on an Arduino board, and then it was that information that the people at IT would come, read, and then now interpret that data to them. But with the TinyML and probably, the using phones and all of that, probably you could find a system where we could always advise, and it's more real time for them, and they could know how to also maximize rainfall and all of those things to help boost their yield. Thank you.
Okay, so I said that was the last question, but there is a final question from Yemina. Please.
And thank you for the questions, by the way. Sorry.
I'm Jemima.
Jemima.
I think I agree with Shegun. So for a couple of months now, there's been fluctuation of prices in my country. I'm from Ghana. But then, upon interaction with people from the rural areas, a little concerning farming and then the climate, I actually realized that even though much of these prices are affected by the change in petrol prices or fuel prices, you realize that if there is any change in climate changes, then the availability of the food stock or whatever it is coming into the urban areas also affects the price changes. So I think it's actually a good idea that this initiative is coming up.
Very nice.
Excellent.
Well, thank you for the inputs. That's super useful. And feel free to share more over email. I shared my email or on the chat. And
just one last comment. So as you're going to use TinyML for this challenge, and many of you already have the devices through the academic network, you're really well positioned to take part in the challenge. So I really invite all of you to take part, and we will share the information on Discord once the call is public, so you can then participate to the challenge. And those of you who don't have the device, there will be some devices available that will be shipped to the best kind of concept notes coming in for the challenge. So thank you very much, Alessandro. Sorry for the short time. We have a very busy afternoon.
No worries,
we have
no worries.
very interesting case studies. You're very much welcome to, stay with us in the afternoon to, for the next talks. Thank you,
Okay.
Alessandro.
Thank you. Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.